Urgency with patience. When sharing the message about the Lord Jesus Christ, we should allow unbelievers time to process and respond to what they have heard. Here's Dr. Gene Getz.
Jesus illustrated this principle. We see it throughout the Gospel of John. At the same time, we see urgency. Urgency that we respond. And we see this urgency in a statement such as this in John 12:35. Jesus answered, "The light will be with you only a little longer. Walk while you have the light so that darkness doesn't overtake you. The one who walks in darkness doesn't know where he's going." You can feel the urgency in Jesus' voice. While you have the light, believe in the light so that you may become children of light. Now, I've called this urgency with patience because you see patience on the part of Jesus in the people that he communicated with. You see this patience with the apostles. Yes, Jesus could be very direct, but he was very patient with their floundering and with their false starts and their a step forward and two-step backwards. And we see that illustrated. We see that true in the lives of even the Pharisees. Though Jesus came to the point he was very direct and very forceful with the Pharisees, he gave them many opportunities to believe. He was patient, and yet he was urgent. So, let's take an illustration, a specific illustration in terms of the Pharisees. Remember Nicodemus? He came to Jesus by night. He was afraid. He was a member of the Sanhedrin. He was fearful. Later on, he actually tried to defend Jesus. And it's possibility at that point he was a secret believer, but he was fearful. But it's really fascinating to see what happened at the cross after Jesus was crucified, and we read this in John 19. In fact, we read about another gentleman as well, Joseph of Arimathea, who probably also was a member of the Sanhedrin. These two religious men and leaders. Notice, what they're doing here could have cost them their lives. Literally, because of the hostility towards Jesus Christ. And here are two prominent religious leaders who had become believers, obviously, in Jesus. After this, Joseph of Arimathea, that is, after Jesus Christ, died. Who was a disciple of Jesus, probably secretively. But secretly, in fact, we read, but secretly because of his fear of the Jews. Asked Pilate that he might remove Jesus' body. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and took his body away. Now that took courage. And then we read about Nicodemus. Nicodemus, who had previously come to him at night, also came bringing a mixture of about 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes. They together took Jesus' body and wrapped it in linen cloths with the fragrant spices according to the burial custom of the Jews. And notice what they did. There was a garden in the place where he was crucified. A new tomb was in the garden. Don't know who owned it, but they probably paid a lot of money for that tomb. No one had yet been placed in it. They placed Jesus there because of the Jewish day of preparation and since the tomb was nearby. Now, what I'm illustrating here through the Gospel of John is that, yes, Jesus communicated with a sense of urgency. Walk in the light while you still have the light. But at the same time, he was very patient with those who were going through a process. And when you read the Gospel of John, you see many people going through that process of coming to really true faith in Jesus Christ. We also see this emphasized in the epistles, particularly when Paul wrote to Titus, and he left him in Crete to establish the church. And these people in Crete were known as some of the most worldly, sinful people in the whole New Testament world. And many of them came to Christ. The church was founded. And Paul left Titus there to establish the church. But this is what he said to Titus, who was communicating with those who were leaders, those who were working with these people. Remind them, Paul said to Titus, remind them to submit to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to slander no one, to avoid fighting, and to be kind, always showing gentleness to all people. What he is simply saying is, when you are ministering now as believers to unbelievers, remember what you were like. Remember how you lived before you became a believer. And so he goes on to say, for we too were once foolish, disobedient, deceived, enslaved by various passions and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful, detesting one another. So you see how this principle grows out of this passage. Let me just restate that principle because it applies, I think, universally and comes right from the Gospel of John and from the story of Jesus himself. When sharing the message about the Lord Jesus Christ, we should allow unbelievers time to process and respond to what they have heard. Now, question for application. What are some of the reasons people today need time to process the truth regarding Jesus Christ? Well, we could address several reasons, I think, but one that comes to me is rather current. For example, I was chatting with a college president, a Christian college president, and he was sharing that they have on that campus a lot of people who come from China and a lot of people who come from India. And I looked up at the map that they had, and I noticed that among those who became Christians were numerous Chinese. And then I noticed that those who became Christians, a lot fewer, were from India. And he went on to make a very insightful statement. He said, Gene, when Indians come from us, people from India, they believe in many gods. And so when we talk about Jesus, they said, oh, I'll accept Jesus. He'll just be another one of these gods. And because of their cultural background, they have more difficulty in coming to understand that no man comes to the Father except by me, Jesus said. It takes them time. And then went on to say, however, those who come from mainland China have come as atheists. They've been taught materialism. They've taught there is no God. So there's no competition in their mind when they hear that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, God in the flesh. They find it easier to respond to this great truth that there is a God and that his Son Jesus Christ came. So, you see, there are cultural reasons why people need space and time to process this great truth that we have here in the Gospel of John. There's another reason, and I think that it's the fact that there are people that are disillusioned. They've seen people who claim to be Christians, and they've seen them violate what they believe. They've seen them living double lives. Sometimes they don't even understand that these people who are living a double life aren't really Christians, they just claim to be. But what really makes it tough is when true Christians live a double life and cause disillusionment. See, God understands all of that, and so should we. So here's the principle to live by that I think comes right from the life of Jesus himself. When sharing the message about the Lord Jesus Christ, we should allow unbelievers time to process and respond to what they have heard.